I spend a tremendous amount of my time on organizational politics. I help our clients with individual conflict, organizational conflict, and change management, both what I refer to as the light side of politics and the dark side of politics. For most CEOs and boards, if you ask them, one of their top priorities is innovation. But innovation doesn't really happen without conflict because we're trying riskier things than we've tried before. The most common conflict style that CEOs admitted to was what I call the consulting style. They consult with everyone on the executive team. They ask their different opinions. What do you think we should do? What's your point of view on this? And then the CEO would make a decision. Now, in many ways, at face value, that's an extraordinarily healthy style. But like any other conflict style, it can go wrong. The question I always ask senior executives is, after you consulted, what did you do? What'd you do with that information? Did you actually incorporate it? Or did you say, actually, that didn't fit with what I thought at all, so I'm just going to do what I want to do? The questioning style is a very common conflict approach. In our survey, about 25% of CEOs use this as their dominant style. And I define this style as a CEO or another senior leader having a list of questions that they regularly ask to help them navigate through unfamiliar decisions. Where questioning is successful is when I'm constantly updating my question list. And I'm saying, I need to keep this list fresh and relevant for what's going on today. When it goes wrong, I'm asking questions that either are too rigid or they confirm my bias. The delegation approach is the leading approach by only a small percentage of CEOs. But where this approach is sometimes challenging is it can result in what I refer to as the corporate cage match. The corporate cage match is what happens when the better fighters win the day, as opposed to the individuals with the better ideas. And this does periodically happen with delegation. The people who win are the people who actually are better at fighting. They're louder, they're stronger, they're the biggest voices in the room, and they can overpower the others. I think for a lot of our clients, their big light bulb moment has been that there's nothing inherently wrong with their own style. That they're not doing anything wrong. It makes them feel as though they haven't failed to handle conflict. They just needed a different set of techniques. They needed a different framework. I had a client who I worked with where he really embraced the notion of the questioning approach. And one of the ways he embraced it was he had a whiteboard behind him in his office, which was visible when he was on camera doing virtual sessions. And he had his standard list of questions that he asked everybody before they made a decision up on the whiteboard. And he said, hey, before we make any significant decision, you all have to answer these questions. Don't come into my office unless you're prepared to answer them. And it was a phenomenal way in which he scaled healthy decision-making by saying, I'm holding everyone to the same standard. Everyone needs to provide this data and be able to answer these questions. So I think for clients like this, it's a major epiphany for them to realize that simply by adding a particular style to the mix, they can go much faster, much further in great decision-making. Almost everyone benefits from healthy conflict management. Again, it's not something we normally talk about in polite company, but I think as senior executives, leaders need to examine their own conflict styles. That's the first thing I need to understand is what's my preferred style? And then I need to understand the style of the individual who I'm influencing. My biggest Eureka moments, my biggest epiphanies in doing the research have been how incredibly critical it is to match techniques to the personality and style of the individual that I'm working with.